So, wet markets. If you've ever heard this term, you've probably heard it in relation to the market in Wuhan, China, the believed starting point of COVID-19. You've probably also heard plenty of rhetoric, mostly pushed by our famed Donnie T, about how it broke out thanks to unsanitary conditions and China shouldn't even have things like wet markets in the first place. So, what the heck is a wet market? In English, the term wet market does sound kind of gross. And maybe you've heard that there are live animals running around everywhere and food is just laid out on the ground. But the term wet market, or 食市场, actually just means perishable foods, versus a dry market, 干市场, which sells dried and canned goods. Basically, a wet market is just the Chinese term for a farmer's market. Don't believe me? Well, I live in Taiwan, and before here I lived in China for 5 years. While Taiwan and the PROC are different in many ways, most of the traditional Taiwanese culture and practices do come from China, considering 97% of Taiwanese are ethnically Han Chinese. And one thing that is pretty much the same is the markets. Luckily for us, I live right down the street from one, so you can go see for yourself. Okay, here we are at my local wet market. If you want to look around, that looks like some pretty disgusting things, right? You'd never want to eat that. No, as you can really see, it's just produce. It's just a market. And we got some, what do we got here? We got some clams, some mussels, some squid, some fish. You can see it's all in packaging, by the way. Fresh eggs. These are brought here every day in the morning. Actually, all of this is. We got some tofu. Taiwanese love their tofu. Now, here's what a lot of people go crazy about, is the meat. And to be honest, it's not that gross. I mean, look at it. It's hanging up. It's in sanitary places. When it's being handled, they all wear gloves. And it's a lot of people will have a problem saying it's not refrigerated, but meat doesn't actually have to be refrigerated if it's served fresh and if it's planned on being used that day, which is what people do. And they actually, they get a shipment of the, well, kind of gross, but like the carcasses every night. I know this because every night when I take Oma out here for a walk, they bring the shipment and I see them cutting them up and butchering them. We got some fresh fish here. Ni hao. Got some stuff to fry them up in if you want. Got some lychee. Oh, longyan, not lychee. Ah, 谢谢. And we got all kind of cooked food as well. We got our veggies, our taters. Got some fresh fish and, oh, squid being put out. Oranges, watermelons, all kind of good things. Look. 这好漂亮. You can even get yourself some apples in a Pringles can or a golf ball can, depending if you ask Miss Hedberg. Lame. Sometimes they'll be covered. This particular one's open and they just use these awnings because it's really hot here mostly. But many of them are actually covered. They'll actually be inside, have a big cover over to protect from rain and things like that. And they're really not any different. Now, if you're having concern that a lot of these people aren't wearing masks, it's because it's not mandated anymore. It was for the longest time until a couple months back, because we haven't had a new local transmission in 5 months since April 3rd. So it's not really that big of a deal. A lot of people still wear them. Actually, this is kind of closing time, so they're actually packing up. I usually still wear mine just out of respect, out of politeness. Look at the size of these cucumbers, by the way. 那黄瓜好大. Beautiful. Beautiful. 你看好大. 这是我不会吃这么多. 谢谢. You might notice that there's no wild animals running around, which you hear, except for one. Oh my. Oh my. You hear this one, maybe. Oh my, I want a boop. Can I have a boop? Boop. Boop. So once you take a good look at it, it's not actually all that scary, is it? It's just a normal farmer's market. There's nothing that special about it, to be honest. Other than it's super convenient. And here we are in a dry market. As you can see, it's really just a difference of products sold. Here you have more dried grains, rice, you get your dried mushrooms, boxed goods, canned goods and such. You know, I prefer this style. I rarely go to the supermarket anymore. I go to the supermarket like if I've got a brand of foreign cereal that I want. And we even have places with traditional Chinese foods and traditional Chinese medicine. So maybe you can see now that wet markets aren't really any different from a farmer's market in the USA. Maybe you've seen some cherry-picked images of some gross markets, and I'm sure I'll get some people in the comments telling me that there are, but remember that China is a giant country, full of modern megacities as well as poor rural areas. And so there are varying levels of conditions, just like in most countries. As a matter of fact, some of the nastiest, foul-smelling markets I've ever been to were in the USA. It's also worth noting that the location of an outbreak's origin really isn't a great metric for evaluating worldwide public health. Honestly, an outbreak can happen anywhere in the world, and they do. It's more important to look at the ability to contain an outbreak and take care of the public if one occurs. While there's plenty to say about China's early handling of the outbreak, which would take a whole nother video, we can look right now at how it's being dealt with worldwide. Places like China have almost completely contained the virus altogether. Here in Taiwan, we haven't had a new locally transmitted case since April 3rd. Meanwhile, cases in the USA are soaring, with almost 6 million cases and over 180,000 deaths, over 1,000 people dying daily, despite having less than a quarter of China's population. And some comment warriors are probably also saying something, China's hiding their numbers. But honestly, you can't hide a number that large. And even if it were possible, why are you assuming that the USA and other countries aren't? I personally know medical professionals in the USA who've contracted the virus while saving lives to find that their cases haven't been recorded, to keep the hospital's numbers down and to deny them benefits like paid time off. The reason places like Taiwan, China, and Vietnam have been able to control the virus is thanks to community-focused protection. Mask mandates, cheap healthcare, free supplies, and so on. Am I excusing the problems of China? No. Having lived there for years, I have tons of criticism for the government and its colonial oppression, both domestic and abroad, but I urge everyone to stop seeing where you live as the exceptional norm and other places outside of your own country as the problem. Then, you might start to realize a lot of this otherizing is actually your own government trying to stoke xenophobic notions, so you don't start looking at them instead. And if you can get that under control, maybe you can have a stroll through your local wet market again. Thanks everyone, I'm Breadbeer with Softboy Social Club. I want to give a huge thanks to all my patrons. This channel wouldn't be possible without you. If you would like to become a patron yourself and get some cool swag, you can go to patreon.com/softboysocialclub, link in the description, or click the little dingy. And make sure to leave a comment, give a like and a share, throw this around in comments whenever you get in an argument on Facebook. Thanks folks, stay safe.